Hello everybody, welcome to Deluxe Collectibles, and today we're going to be comparing the LEGO Ninjago Seabound minifigures to their counterparts in the actual show. I wanted to do this because I found it interesting some of the minor sort of differences between some of the figures and then some of the more major ones, and I wanted to have the opportunity to discuss it within a video. But just to set some rules for this comparison here, I'm not going to be taking a look at any figures that aren't within the actual show, of course, so things like Cole or Kai's scuba suits, those ones aren't going to be discussed because, of course, even though they're technically not canon and would not be accurate to the show, I'm not going to discuss them and compare them to, of course, like their season 11 looks within the actual show, because that just wouldn't really make a lot of sense. And I also won't be comparing characters like Maya, for instance, who does have a minifigure, but it wasn't from the Seabound wave, so we'll be going over exclusively minifigures released in this new Seabound wave, and that's going to include 10 characters in total. So without further ado, let's get straight into it here and start off with the first figure. Alright, so the first figure that we have here is one of the Maaray Guards right here, and I wanted to start off with some of the more simple ones, and then we'll get into some of the figures with more major differences, I would say, and just who are more major characters, of course, within it. But here we have one of the standard guards, and honestly, I was so glad with the photo that I was able to find for this guy, because they're in like the exact same pose here, of course, with just the Tea Vee counterpart holding a weapon there, but still very similar here. And as you can see just for yourself, they've done a really great job of translating this into the actual minifigure from the show there. I think they did a fantastic job with it. The one major thing missing here is, of course, having a pupil in the actual eye there. I do feel like that does look a little bit weird on the minifigure counterpart not having that, but also it kind of works as well because it does make it look a little bit more menacing, I would say, because kind of in the show, I feel like the pupil gives it a little bit more humanity, if you want to call it that, or just a bit more personality. But with the minifigure, it just looks a little bit more lifeless, I would say, but it still looks really great the way they were able to translate it here. Of course, the blue is a little bit different. I'd say it's more teal on the minifigure, and then it's more of like a light like sea blue in the actual show, but they're still matched up really well, and I'm so impressed with the actual printing. They did such a great job of just nailing it down on the torso and the legs, and the armor piece looks perfect also. So they just did honestly a fantastic job with translating this figure. I think it looks amazing, and I honestly do not have many complaints. Then the next character that we have here is Glutinous right here, and this one is another case where I think LEGO did a really fantastic job with translating it into minifigure form right here. Now there are a few more complaints that I have with this one, differences wise, compared to the previous figure, because with this one I feel like he's really missing like the monocle that kind of goes over his eye there, or the magnifying glass, whatever you'd like to call it. I know he comes with an accessory for that, but it's not really like in a position where it can kind of go over his eye to sort of recreate the design that you can see from the show, so that is a little bit unfortunate. And then with the legs, of course, there are a few minor differences, I would say, there, because of course they don't have all of those sort of pieces that they can really like accurately recreate it, but I still am satisfied with the LEGO counterpart. I want to say that as well, that I'm not like dissatisfied with any of these figures that I'm going over in this video. I just find it fun to kind of point out some of the differences here and kind of try to reason out why they might have done some of these things. And with the Glutinous, I feel like it's just not having access to pieces that look exactly like the show counterpart, so I feel like it does make sense. And then the actual printing on the torso looks really good. I like the little connecting teal right there between the legs and the actual body there. I think they did a great job with that, and I think overall it's still a really well done figure. Now the next one that we have here is the Tea Vee right here, and this one is another really interesting figure. Honestly, I would say this is one that has one of the most major differences here, just as you can tell right away from the way they both look here. Of course, in the actual LEGO version, like the physical LEGO version, it's definitely made to look more like a minifigure or a semi-minifigure. Of course, the legs are the only thing kind of giving off that sort of design, but it definitely comes off looking very different from the actual show here. Now, I do think the actual face of the like Tea Vee here, I think they did a really good job of recreating that with the printing, but then the actual body here, of course, does not look very accurate here. It's definitely more circular in the actual show. It doesn't have legs like how it does in the actual minifigure here, and it's very different in that sort of way. So there are definitely some major differences with this one. Now, it doesn't bother me as much because, of course, this isn't a major character, and I think it still serves its purpose really well here within the actual Lego version, but it's just kind of odd because they advertise this as like a minifigure, but then within the show, it's not really taking on that sort of appearance. So it's definitely quite interesting, and I don't really know the reasoning of why they would do this. Maybe to kind of provide us with still technically a Woo minifigure within Seabound, but just in a completely different form like that. That would kind of be the reasoning that I would think they were kind of going with, and I still think it turned out really well, but it's just definitely some really interesting changes between the two of these. Now, the next one here is Nya in her scuba suit, and for a lot of the ninja, I think they did some really great jobs with all of the scuba suits, of course, without Kai and Cole being counted, which I do love those figures, but of course they don't make an appearance within the actual show, so they're technically not canon, but still, I think they did a great job with those. But for Nya here, for instance, I think they did a good job with her. Now, I do feel like maybe it's just within the show, the actual lighting of her outfit, but the blue feels a little bit bright here, but I completely get why they did it here, because of course Jay is in blue as well, and you don't want to have them in the same tone of blue or too closely, because then they're gonna look very similar to each other. So I definitely do like the route that they went with this, and I still feel like it does match pretty well there, and I think honestly it's just some of the lighting within some of the scenes. I'm sure if it was in very bright light, then it would look a little bit more of this bright blue that it's showing in the actual minifigure, but printing wise, they honestly did such a fantastic job. Now, of course, with the actual scuba helmet there are definitely some sort of differences between the two of them. One of the major things I've seen kind of as a complaint with the actual minifigure is that you can see the mouth of the actual minifigure head from inside of the actual like scuba helmet there, but then within the show, of course, you can't see that, so that is a little bit disappointing, and it's obviously got to do with just where the printing is placed on the actual minifigure heads, and also just with the actual like molding of the helmet there. It's definitely a little bit different from its actual counterpart within the show, and I would say personally I do like the look of it within the show a little bit more than the minifigure counterpart, but I still don't mind the design of it in the actual figure. I still think it pulls off that sort of look of looking like a bit of a ninja like mask right there, but then also portraying the scuba sort of look as well, and I think they did a great job with the sort of like translucent visor there. I think that looks really great, so it's still definitely really well done. I also like just the legs and the torso. I feel like they really did nail it quite a bit with that, so I can definitely really appreciate it in that aspect. It's just some minor things with the helmet, I would say, and that's about all for Nya. Now we've got Jay right here, and of course with the other scuba suit ninja here, it's going to be very similar comments, I would say, because honestly for all of them, I would say they really nailed the torso prints with each and every one of them. I can't really find too many inconsistencies. Of course, there's the small things of having a tiny bit of printing on the actual sides of the figures within the show, but of course you can't expect that you're going to get that within the actual minifigure of the physical one, so I never really would have expected that, and I wouldn't really count it as an actual inconsistency. So I think for the actual front torso printing, they did a really great job, and I do apologize as well, of course, with the images that we have here. We don't really have a look at the back of the figure, so I can't really compare those, but if I do wind up getting the sets physically, then maybe I'll revisit this in the future and do it a little bit more in depth, since I would actually have my hands on the physical figures. But from the image here, I think they did do a great job with the actual front of the torso printing there. The legs as well look pretty decent. Now, from what I can see from the actual image that I'm using, it does feel like it is well done, but I feel like maybe it's a little bit off, but I still do think they did a really great job with it. And then of course, I'm not going to go over the helmet too much. I feel like they did a good job with it, but it's the same sort of comments as I said with Nya. Alright, now we've got Zane here, and this is one where I feel like the printing on the actual legs is a tiny bit off with this, just how you can kind of see how the actual like belt there is kind of going down on the legs. You can see it fully like is down there on the actual physical minifigure, but then you can see once it hits the gray portion there that it actually stops like the little ties on the belt. So that's a small inconsistency. Obviously that is a super minor nitpick, but that's kind of what this video is for, is to make those minor nitpicks right there. But then with the actual torso printing there, I think they once again just nailed it, and the actual helmet as well nailed the design also. So I am definitely really pleased with this one, and also just really glad that we got a outfit for Zane like this, because even within the show they reference how Zane doesn't require oxygen, of course, so he doesn't necessarily need this outfit, but he just kind of likes the look of it and how it matches with all of the other ninjas. So I like how they addressed that within the actual show, and then that allowed us to get a figure, because we don't want to run into a Digi Zane situation once again. So I am really glad with the outcome of this figure, and I feel like it is really well done. Now we have the last of the Scuba Suit Ninja here, but don't worry, we still have 2 figures to go over after this one here. But we have Lloyd, and very similar comments. I feel like I'm repeating myself quite a bit with the Scuba Suit one, so I won't spend too much time on this. They nailed it with the torso, they did a great job with the legs, and then the actual helmet there, once again, just looks really good. I felt that they did a good job of portraying the color scheme as well, because of course I love what Lloyd does with a lot of his suits, with it kind of having different tones of the green on it, like different shades of it. So I think they did a good job of accurately sort of portraying that on the actual figure from what it looks like within the show. So I do like that quite a bit. Now I will say with Lloyd, just quickly, on his actual face there, you can really notice his smile there. It's definitely one of the most noticeable ones on the ninja, so that does look a little bit off, but still I think they did a good job with the outfit here overall. Now we come to the third final figure right here, and this is where it gets really fun, because these are some of the new characters here and just fully new designs that we haven't seen previously in Ninjago. So of course I'm not saying that the other ones weren't. Of course the suits are new for the ninja, but just kind of new characters here. And we have Benthomaar right here, and I think that he honestly looks so great on the figure, and this is a case where I honestly love how much detail they added to the figure kind of over the actual TV show version. I feel like I like the designs of the TV show ones more often, but I feel like with the actual figure here they added so much detail, especially to the printing of the face. Now one thing I will say about this figure is that the actual coloring of like the small bits of armor on his actual body, the coloring is a little bit off from what it looks like within the actual show. In the show it definitely is more toned down and more of a bronze color, but then on the actual figure it's definitely more bright with like a brighter yellow and an orange as well. So it definitely is quite different from its actual look in the show, but I still do like the look of it, and I like how it accurately is that printing. Like the actual like drawings and images there definitely look very accurate to the show's portrayal of them, and that includes the legs as well. They did a fantastic job with that. But yeah, I would definitely say with the face they did a really fantastic job, and the hair as well. I'm so glad that they were able to use that hairpiece there in black. It looks so fantastic, so I really do love that. I like his expression as well, so I do feel like they did a really fantastic job with Bentho right here. I definitely do love his figure quite a bit. Now we have the main villain of Seabound right here, of course, Kalmaar, and this figure looks phenomenal. It is definitely one of my favorite Ninjago figures just of all time, honestly, and definitely in the realm of villain designs, and I think they did such a great job with just accurately making the molds here for the actual head there. I think it looks so great and definitely looks really fantastic next to the actual show counterpart. Now, my one main complaint with this one kind of matches up with my complaints that I had with like Glutinous and the Maaray Guards, and that is the actual eyes right there, that they don't really have like the same sort of pupils as Kalmaar does within the show, and not even really the same coloring as well, because the color matches up with his gills there on his head, but within the show of course it's a completely different color than his actual gills are, so that is a tiny bit disappointing there. But I'm assuming it's just got to do something with the way they sort of mold the actual head here, and I still do like the look of it. And of course there seems seems to be even more detail added to his actual head there, of course, with some of the little spots printed on the top of it there, and then within the show you can't really see any of that. It's just a solid purple, so definitely some differences there also. And then just the eyes, going back to that, the red that they have on there, it just, I don't know, it looks a little bit off from the actual look of it from within the show, so that's a tiny bit disappointing. But once again, it's very nitpicky. I'm just so grateful that they were able to nail it with the actual molding of the head right there. And then the torso and the actual like tentacle legs right there, they just nailed it. They look so fantastic. The printing's really great. Of course, you can't expect it to really be glowing like how it is within the actual show, but I think that might have been cool to see in minifigure form, but obviously would have been very difficult to actually pull that off. So I definitely am very satisfied with the printing that they went with here, and it definitely looks very accurate to within the show. And then the actual armor piece that he's using, of course, doesn't really match up with the photo that I'm showing here, but still, of course, you can take off that armor piece. It's a very minor thing, so I would say they definitely really did a great job with this Kalmaar minifigure. Alright, now we've arrived at the final figure here, and I would say the most exciting one to compare here, and that is the NRG Nya minifigure, of course, the Master of Water figure here, where Nya has fully become one with the ocean. And this figure honestly looks amazing, both within the show and within actual physical form. Now, of course, this is the reason why I saved it for last. I mean, for one, it is Nya's season, but also because it is definitely the one with the most noticeable differences here. It is honestly crazy how many differences there are with this figure. I mean, I don't have to really spell it out for you too much here. Now, I will say with the actual printing on the torso, other than the fact of course, it should be a fully translucent looking figure, at least semi-translucent with the blue sort of coloring going on, but with the actual printing on the torso and the legs, I do feel like they match that really well to the actual counterpart within the show, so I definitely really appreciate that. Now, with the hair piece, when that was initially revealed, I didn't know what Nya was going to look like in this final form within the actual Seabound show, and I was quite happy that they were giving her a new hairpiece here, because I mean, I'll never say no to a new Lego hairpiece, and I still won't, but it definitely is not accurate to the way that it looks within the actual show. I mean, the one in the show just looks kind of like her normal hair, of course in translucent blue, but also maybe a little bit more frizzed out a little bit, like kind of going outward a bit more. But I think that it still definitely looks more akin to her normal hairpiece that she regularly uses over the one that they chose to use here, especially with the headband there, and even on the figure just commenting on the half mask as well. Of course, she's not wearing that within the actual show, so it's a little bit odd. Of course, that's something once again that you can easily remove, but it definitely just doesn't match up perfectly with the show. But also, I don't think that was exactly their goal here as well. I think they just wanted to provide us with a really cool sort of design within both the show and the figure, and honestly, I'm satisfied with both of them here. I think they look great. Now, I'm not saying that I wouldn't say no to getting a very accurate version of Nya here, but I still appreciate what they were able to pull off with the actual figure here. I like the one translucent blue arm there. I like the printing, as I said, on the legs and the torso. The actual face print as well looks really fantastic also, and definitely matches pretty well with the way that the printing looks on her face in the show. But then the hairpiece, of course, and kind of even the tint of the actual translucent blue is a little bit different. It kind of looks a little bit more teal. They kind of go towards more teal colors, I feel like, in the actual physical forms of these figures, but nonetheless, I think they did do a really great job here with the physical figure and with the design within the show. I never thought we'd get to see a version of Nya that would look like this in either form, so I'm just really grateful and excited to have this figure in physical and show form. So yeah, I'd still say even despite all of the differences, they still were able to pull off both designs in an excellent way. Alright, so that's going to conclude the video here for my comparisons between all of the LEGO Ninjago Seabound minifigures. Of course, the ones where you can actually compare the differences and the ones where it's not prior minifigures that we've already received as well. But I hope you did enjoy the video. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on all of these comparisons as well. let me know as well if you want to go the extra mile. Tell me which counterpart you prefer for each of the figures, especially Nya. I'm very curious to hear if there's any real big fans of the figure over the show design, or if you prefer the show's portrayal and design for Nya in this NRG form. I'm really curious to sort of hear about that in the comments from all of you, and just thanks so much for watching. If you did enjoy, it would be highly appreciated if you could leave a like on the video. Also subscribe as well if you would like to see some of my other content, and let me know if you would like to see me do more comparisons like this in the future as well. I'm thinking about doing it for some of the actual sets from Seabound as well, comparing them to their show counterparts. So let me know if you would like to see that also in the future at some point. But just thanks so much. I'll see you all next time, and always remember, keep on collecting.